Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Marketplace Report by Handmade Seller Magazine. I'm your host, Amber Christian, and today I am so happy to welcome Dottie from the British Craft House to the show. So, welcome, Dottie, and can you give us an introduction and tell us about yourself and a little bit about the British Craft House?
Hi Amber, thank you so much for having me on. I absolutely love what you do. So I'm the founder of the British Craft House, which is a multi-vendor platform for handmade items made in the UK. We're a little bit different to a lot of the other marketplaces in that we are by application only, which means that it's a very curated site. We have only the highest quality, which for the customers shopping means that they can be guaranteed that they're going to absolutely get the best of British handmade that's available in the UK.
hmm So, tell us about starting the British Craft House. You have a really interesting origin story on what led you up to creating the marketplace. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's a bit of a winding path, actually. Do stop me if it becomes a bit dull. I was actually in the military for 22 years as an air traffic controller. And when I was serving in the military, my husband was away and I started making cards. I had two little boys and I needed to kind of fill my evenings. And I find that actually I was quite creative. I went to a traditional British grammar school where there was no art and crafts at all, really. And I really enjoyed it. And then people started wanting to buy what I was making.
hmm
And that kind of led on to when I left the Royal Navy. I started. I was selling in 12 different shops, and really the internet was just starting to spring up. I realised that there wasn't much money to be made in making cards, and
hmm
so I then started making guest books for weddings and christenings, keepsake boxes, and that kind of thing, which I could charge a lot more for. So as I was then, I had my own website. It was quite hard to be seen. I started selling on Etsy and some of the UK marketplaces, and I was having a good amount of success. I was also meeting an awful lot of creatives that were absolutely fantastic at what they do, super talented artists and ceramicists, and they really just weren't very good at selling their work. And so there was one lady, I can remember, she was saying, I have to sell something because I can't get into my garage. Literally, she was just making pots upon pots and ceramics and jugs, but she wasn't just getting the hang of social media to be able to sell it. And so then I had the idea, I was selling on Etsy at the time, of setting up an Etsy team where everybody would help each other. And the idea was if you joined the team, you kind of pledged an allegiance to help other people and to promote other people. And that worked really well. And I set up social media public facing pages for us to promote our own work. What I realized at that point was there was a huge swathe of creatives, worldwide creatives, that were desperately trying to be seen. And our Facebook page grew from nothing to around about 20,000 their fans, they were called back then, within about a year. And so there was definitely a huge need for people needing other people to give them the exposure to be seen. And I was just running this alongside my Etsy shop for around about a year and a half, just promoting and helping other people to be seen. We would have a theme of the day. So we might say, hey, it's Monday, today is Nature Day. Can I put a link to what you've got that is to do with the nature theme? And then people would buy things from each other. And so that kind of went on for a while and it got really busy. And I wasn't making any money from this, although it had become a bit of a full time job, to be honest. And
hmm
towards the second Christmas, I started to get emails from people asking me if I would be interested in them paying me to be able to be on the Facebook page. Because, for example, there was a lady who sold bird baths. She hadn't sold any for months. I put her bird bath on the Facebook page and she sold 25 bird baths or something, within a really short space of time.
Oh.
So at the point where people were asking to pay me, I kind of sat down and tried to work out whether this, could actually be a business, a viable business that I
Hmm.
could run alongside what I was doing. And crafters and artists historically just don't have very much money. So I priced it really low. And then for the following kind of year and a half, I was really busy, but really not making any money. But all the time, all of the social media accounts were growing, and our audience, was growing and really engaged. And actually, it was one of those things that you don't see coming. And a lot of the sellers that were selling on Etsy in the UK, it was around about 2018, and Etsy decided that people could only be seen in their search results if they had free shipping, which, if you were in the UK, kind of didn't work. So my guest books, for example, used to cost about around $15 to be posted to the US. I couldn't absorb that into my pricing because that wouldn't be fair then for my UK
Right.
customers. There was no way to split it off. And there were lots of really unhappy people. And so I did this kind of big brainstorm, and tried to imagine what would a perfect platform look like. There are some handmade platforms in the UK, but they're virtually unknown. Some of them are as old as Etsy, but no one's heard of them. And so I started getting this kind of seed of an idea, that maybe I could build a platform. And
Hmm.
it was, in looking back now, it was kind of a little bit crazy because obviously, I didn't have the background. I was an air traffic controller. I'd kind of accidentally fallen into being creative. Then I'd accidentally fallen into running a promotions company. And there I was using the idea that I could build a platform. And at the same time, as this kind of craziness was going on, I was training for the London Marathon. And I was off on the longest run that I was doing for my training, which was 18 miles. And on that run, I basically talked myself in and out of it as a concept. And
Mhm.
by the end of it, in my head, I'd written my business plan. And I came home and my husband said, "How did it go?" I'm like, "Oh, the running was fine. I've got this brilliant business idea." And he's like, "Just sit down, have some chocolate, have some coffee." And yeah, it was fantastic. And it was at the same time that what do you have Dragon's Den in the US?
Dragon's
Do you have
Den. I'm
it's
not
like
sure.
well, in the UK, it's a program where they have kind of big business people, and people go and pitch a business idea, and these dragons invest in you. But I haven't
Like
been.
Shark Tank,
Yeah,
kind of.
yes,
Got it.
yes, exactly.
Got it.
So
Got it. Mhm.
I haven't been on that, but I won an award from one of the dragons that works in the UK. And I went to a
Ah.
conference, and there was a guy there who was like the big speaker, Sir Tom Hunter, and he's like really famous kind of entrepreneur, Scottish entrepreneur, and he said, to everybody in the room, about 3,000 of us, if you have an idea and you've got the passion and the drive and you're prepared to put in the hard work to make it work, you've got to do it, because if you don't do it, what will happen? You will never know. And
Right.
honestly, it was like something
Mhm.
from Hollywood. It was like he was talking to me, like the spotlights were on me. I just really felt he was saying to me, you've got to try this, because actually, what's the worst that can happen? You know, and so that was it. This was in the February of 2019, and I launched on the 1st of November. So I'm a bit of a doer. So it was kind of right. Okay, I'm going to do this, going to commit to it. And I was really lucky that I literally kind of thought, right, okay, I don't have the money to do this, so I need to get a loan. And I
Mhm.
managed to get a Virgin entrepreneur loan, which Richard Branson
Mhm.
sponsored around about 5,000 businesses, I think now, and mainly they invest in tech companies,
Yep.
in men and people in their 30s. So I was completely left field, not ticking any of these boxes. But
Mhm.
along with the loan, you've got training courses, you've got a mentor, you've got help and advice and financial advice. And so they were absolutely amazing. and they're still in the background now supporting. So I did get really lucky to get that support from early doors. And
Mhm.
so I launched on the 1st of November 2019. So it was a bit of a rambling tale, but it all kind of pieces together as to
Yeah.
why I ended up doing. It was
Yeah.
all very accidental, I suppose. I'm a fixer. I see a problem and I want to make it better. I want to I want to be that difference, and the social media people were struggling with. That's okay. I could do that. I could do social media for everybody. And then okay, nobody likes the platforms are on, right. Okay, let's make a platform. But the brilliant thing with setting up the British Craft House was that because I had such a wonderful engaged audience of people that were already paying me to do their social media, it was fantastic to be able to, email out to them all and say, right, okay, what does this look like? You know, this
Mhm.
this this is not my platform. This is attempting to fill the need that we all want. So, what does it look like? How big is it? What features does it need? And from there, that was just the most powerful thing, being able to have such an engaged group of people that were invested, and not all of them joined, but they were all invested in
Mhm.
it being built.
Right, and I think there's a lot to be said for the journey that all of these different business models are taking, and everyone is in a different place in the journey. And a lot of what you're talking about, what is unique and interesting about what you're talking about is you're actually building in a whole base of people that were ready for this platform before you even knew you needed to make a platform. And so you started with the audience first, right? And so that makes it for me a lot different than a lot of marketplaces start. They look for the sellers and then they look for the buyers. And I've seen some that have grown out of Facebook groups. They all have a little bit of a different model, but you started a lot further along in your journey with having a lot of the buyers there because you were running some of these communities ahead of time. And so that makes it really interesting to me and different because it getting to the critical buying mass or for the number of sellers on your platform, that's the trick for everyone, right? So that there are enough buyers for the different sellers on the platform. And so, how do you was your development of bringing all these of getting all these people in, was it always just organic and word of mouth, or did you have to do any advertising? How did people find you even before you started British Craft House in these initial groups? I'm very curious about that.
Well, so the initial Facebook group, which was British Crafters, that was completely organic, and I think that this is Facebook back in 2013. It launched
Hmm.
the Facebook
Hmm.
page, and I think Facebook was a much easier place to grow and sell from. It's
Hmm.
really much more difficult now, and when
Hmm.
I'm helping my sellers to try and grow their Facebook pages now, the reach, it is
No,
just
I know.
tedious and very difficult. But
Yeah.
I think that the way that I ran the Facebook page, I was talking about it's Nature Day, post your link. Now, not everybody who posted their links would get shared to the page. My ethos was that please like, comment, and share other people's posts. And the more you're seen to be doing that, the more likely you are that your item is going to be shared. And so, of course,
Mhm.
just having that level of interaction where people are sharing something, to other kind of groups and other pages and their own personal profiles, and the growth really, was rapid. And, I said we went from 0 to 20,000 in the first year. We're now at 53,000 or something, and so to double that took another kind of 8 years or something, so the growth in the beginning was, really strong. And I think that, it's quite lucky in a way that my slightly accidental business growth was all in the same direction, all with the same audience. Because if I had
Mhm.
gone from British crafters to I don't know, running a thing for animals or something. If I'd completely changed, then I think my audience would have just gone. But it's
Gone. Hmm.
because everything has always been handmade, and and even when people were interacting on the original page, I only shared their work to the page if the photos were good, which is kind of where I'm at now with the British Craft House. That a lot of the people who don't get accepted initially, some of them go away and work on their photos and come back. Quite
Hmm.
often, it's because of their photos, and because I really believe that if you're selling something online, you have to make up for the fact that it's on a flat screen. And so if someone's going into
Hmm.
a craft fair and they're picking up a necklace, they can see the weight, they can see how big it is, they can see the front, they can see the back. And so every listing on the website can have 8 photos. And I asked the sellers to use all of those 8 photos so they can show a sense of perspective, they can show a close up, they can show the packaging it comes in, because I think that's really important to bridge that gap for where the customer might think, I'm just not sure because I can't see it in real life. And so it's just
Hmm.
trying to, get that onto the page. And that starts with a good photo, because if your photos aren't good and clear and in focus and enticing, then, when it appears in a Facebook ad, no one's going to click on it. And I run Facebook ads all the time for every single product on the website. That's not curated at all because the website is curated. I don't need to curate the adverts.
Oh, that's interesting. So your choice with the British Craft House is to be very selective in who comes in, really work hard to make sure and work with those people to make sure there's very good quality photos. And that makes the advertising side of it substantially easier for you. And you can set up automation and processes and things because the photos have already been taken care of and are beautiful. That's really interesting. Okay. And so I like your point about making sure you have multiple angles on products because so often people just have one. And then you're right, you can't tell on a necklace. They're like, "Oh, it's so many inches." I'm like, "I don't know how long that's gonna be on my neck as I'm playing with my little necklace I just got here at craft fair." Um, so yes, I think that's a great point as well about multiple different photos so that you can bridge the gap between what would happen at a craft fair and what would happen online.
Yeah,
And I think that's
absolutely.
a way of describing it. I haven't seen anyone talk about it that way before, but I like that thought process. So, are there other things that you think are different at all about the listings or what you encourage people to put as information on the products that you think make things a little different at the British Craft House?
Well, I think that one of the things that we do, because we're much smaller, is that
Mhm.
people help each other. And so we have a private sellers hub on Facebook where
Mhm.
people will help each other with their listings, for example. And
Mhm.
so we work really closely to try and make sure all of the keywords are captured, search engine optimization is sorted, that everyone has their photographs labeled with keywords, that the descriptions are not too long so that Google doesn't pick them up. And so I think that again on a big site, people just do their own thing, and they could upload 100 things without the right information, and nobody would ever notice. Whereas we very much are hands on. And in our Facebook hub, people can put their first listing up and say, "Okay, guys, what do you think? Is there anything I should be doing differently?
Mhm.
What do you suggest I could do? That would mean that I'd be more likely to get a sale." And I think because we're quite small, people really have each other's backs, and so even people in the same genre of craft will help each other,
Mhm.
and I think that's quite special. And so in the Facebook hub, we have like a daily post that says, "Hey everybody, it's Friday, yay, brilliant! What are you doing today?" And people can say, "Oh, I'm going to put 10 listings in my shop," or they could say, "I'm taking my mum for a hospital appointment," and 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 the people will be checking back the following day to say, "How did the hospital appointment, go with your mum. So it's really quite small town, if you like,
Mhm.
within our group. And we have in Hampshire, where I live, there are within probably about 10 miles. There's about 10 sellers, and we've met up and gone and had cocktails and coffee and cake. And actually, when we did it the first time, people were saying, oh, "I want to do that." And so then there was a little group that met up in Cornwall. There's a group that's met up in Scotland, and so these kind of friendships that are born from selling on the same site have turned into people going out for coffee, and in many ways the community that sits behind it. I'm as proud of that as I am of the website. And we win quite a lot of awards actually, and I'm sure that quite often it's the community side that people
Mhm.
really like as much as the front end of the website. And during COVID, when it was all a bit bleak, and we were really busy because launch a gift site and then look everybody up. It was rather good for sales. But in the summer when it was all a bit bleak, I had this idea I was going to do a secret Santa. Do you do secret? Do you know
Oh, yeah,
Secret
yeah,
Santa?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, Secret
Yep.
Santa. So Secret Santa in July. So we're doing like a Christmas in July kind of swap thing. And I thought, if only 3 people sign up for it, then 3 people are going to get something nice through the post and be happy. And we had over 200 people sign up to do this kind of Christmas in July swap. And I think that kind of captures the spirit of the people. And it's really nice. It's really special. And I think that not everybody even joins the hub. Some people it's not their thing. Some people
Mhm.
don't like Facebook. Some people are just busy, making
Yeah.
their jewelry or whatever, and they don't want any of the community. But it is a lovely thing.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a nice option to offer people because knowing that these types of small businesses, it can really be isolating and lonely, particularly if you're wearing all the hats yourself for those businesses, and to be able to find that some community at all that of other people that understand what you're going through and what you go through as a small business is important. And it's opt-in. It's not, you're not forcing it on anybody, but if you would like it, it's there. And so that's another aspect that wouldn't really show up if someone was reading your website. They wouldn't know that, oh, by the way, if you're a seller on here, there are sort of these other really nice things that you can do as well, because it's not all about business all the time, all the time, all the time. It's about the relationships and the longevity that you can build with that. So now, in terms of categories for what you sell on the British Craft House, can you walk me through the categories and the types of things that you sell at the British Craft House?
Yeah, sure. So everything has to be handmade,
Mhm.
or obviously art has to be original art. We don't have any kind of AI generated art. We don't have any drop shipping or kind
Mhm.
of copyright. Again, because we're small, we can keep quite a tight rein on everything. But
Mhm.
everything has to be genuinely handmade by the seller. And we have quite a peculiar stamps on jewelry actually, which is something that
Mm.
I wanted to make different and a bit of a USP for our jewelry sellers. And so to sell jewelry on the site, you have to have made the focal point. So we don't have people, for instance, making any beaded jewelry with beads that they've bought in. So there is beaded jewelry where it's glass beads and or paper beads or whatever, where the seller has actually made the beads. But on some of the other sites, there's some fabulous, glass bead makers and things, but lots of people buy the same things. And actually, there's a point where you don't know who's made the jewelry because the jewelry looks really similar because they've all used
Mm.
the same focal beads from the same bead makers. And so
Mm.
that kind of gives our jewelry quite an elevated stance compared to the kind of beads on elastic and there's room, don't get me wrong, there's room for all of that out there in the
Mhm.
handmade space.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
our kind of stance is that everything has to be handmade by the seller. So we've got lovely silversmiths, we've got
Mhm.
amazing jewelers, and jewelry is probably our most constant best-selling category. And we
Okay.
get a huge number of return customers because I think they know that they're buying something unique. They're buying something that probably isn't for sale anywhere else, but that it will genuinely have been made in Great Britain, in a garage, workshop, back room, attic. It's been made somewhere by a kind of small independent business. And I think that within the other marketplaces that are now so big, and there's such a kind of, is something handmade or is it not handmade? There's always that element of doubt. We wipe that out completely. Everything is completely genuinely handmade. And yeah, the only danger for me is that I want to buy it all, but that's another problem.
That's a different problem.
Yes.
Not enough storage space.
Yes, quite.
So when these marketplaces are a journey, and we've been talking about how it evolved from a group. And so as you started moving into what does this look like as a marketplace, can you talk about where you started and then kind of how it's evolved to how things are sold today? Like, how has that journey evolved from the marketplace itself as you started selling to customers?
Well, so to begin with, obviously, I had this really engaged bunch of people who had helped me
Mhm.
design it. And that meant that I ended up with around about 50 people that were testing the site. So
Mm.
before we launched, we had a really good base of people. The people I chose from across all of the different genres, so that when the website launched, there were no kind of gaps, no empty categories. So it was kind of like a mini micro version of what it was going to grow to be.
Mhm.
And the majority, not all of those test sellers are still with me, and we're five years old this November. Some of
Mhm.
them have gone off and done other things. They've
Mhm.
gone back to work, etc. But the majority of the testers are still on the website.
Mm. Mhm.
And that was really important to me, I think, to have that proper base. And I've sold on a site in the UK that's as old as Etsy, and actually I joined it when it was in beta, and it was a nightmare. It was kind of
Mhm.
all over the place, and I knew that I didn't want to get on people. I was happy to have my testers working it out, working through things, but before we launched and I was charging people to come and sell, I wanted it to be at a certain standard. And so really from there it's grown organically. I have done some advertising, again on Facebook, and Instagram, because that's really where our audience are sitting. But I think most of our new sellers come from word of mouth. They have to do an application to join, and probably 9 times out of 10 in the, why do you want to join, it'll be that someone has recommended it, or they've seen
Mhm.
the adverts and they've seen the presence online. They can see other people saying how happy they are. And I love that, because that's the best way to get people in the door,
Mhm.
because they've kind of got, their expectations are managed if they've already spoken to somebody that's kind of on the site. And yeah, we kind of go up and down in numbers. In COVID, we had a huge spike of sellers. And then obviously after COVID, lots of people had to go back to work to their real jobs, which was a bit of a shame. And then when there were problems with Etsy last year, again we had a big spike of applications. So we kind of go up and down, but just a gradual growth. But I don't ever want the site to be enormous. I don't ever want it to have 10,000 sellers. I want it to remain perfectly formed and working perfectly well, with everybody really happy. And there's a point, if you have too many sellers, that it kind of goes beyond that. We have around about
Mhm.
20,000 items for sale on the website at
Mhm.
the moment.
Mhm.
And that's quite a good choice for people. I think it would be nice. It would be nice for us to grow, probably I would aspire to have another 100 sellers by the end of this year.
Okay.
And and obviously, new sellers bring new client bases, customers. So kind of with just building up the pace. But no, I never, I've never done an offer. There are other sites that that kind of offer come and have your first month for £1, or there's a site in the
Oh,
UK at the moment that is doing a pay as you feel thing, where
oh,
you, yeah,
like a pay what you want to pay kind
yeah,
of thing?
yeah, which
Hmm.
which is great, but it wouldn't pay my bills, which are quite
No,
big. It's, a multi-vendor site is quite an expensive beast to keep on the rails.
they
But
are.
so I don't, I've never had any kind of gimmicks like that. The subscription price is a fair price, and people get quite a lot for their money. So there's no half price offer on Black Friday, or we're just steady, and we'll just grow gradually as time goes
Mhm.
on. Really.
Mhm. And so you don't anticipate anytime soon hitting that cap or ceiling where you're like, nope, no more sellers because we're at our items. You still feel like to still have a well curated site, you have room to grow yet.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
you're always needing new sellers and needing people to come. Now, one of the interesting things about the reality of a lot of marketplaces is the sellers are often easier to find than the buyers. And what has made that so unique that you had built in this buyer base ahead of time. So talk a little bit about what does it mean to curate now in this new version of the site, and how do you stay on top of what your buyers want? So talk a little bit more about the thought process around the buyer side and keeping them active and engaged, because that's one of the most important things for a marketplace is to keep those buyers activated.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have an amazing newsletter with a quite a large subscriber base that is 12 years old now. So
Mhm.
it's been kind of around for a long time, and we really really value the subscribers, mainly because unlike social media, where your content may be shown to 10% if you're lucky of your
Right.
followers.
Hmm.
With a newsletter, you can guarantee that you pop into someone's inbox and they've definitely got you. So we really value subscribers, and whenever I'm running a giveaway, which I do sometimes, say on our birthday or for Christmas, I will always run that through the newsletter. I do obviously advertise it on the social media pages that it's being run on the newsletter to try and get people to come and sign up to the newsletter. But yeah, so the giveaways are always done via the newsletter, really as a thank you to those guys for being so invested. And I sent a newsletter out this morning, and some people reply and say thank you, that was really lovely. Today's theme was butterflies, and so I just kind of did, it's the summer, got some butterflies. There's lots of butterflies on the website, really lovely things. And I found a really lovely quote, which was saying that, a butterfly is, I should have put it up on the other page. I should have been able to quote it to you. But basically, it was that a butterfly is very beautiful, but it can't see its own beauty because it's out with itself. And the idea was that that's the same for people. That quite often you can't see how beautiful you are because you're looking inward. And I had about half a dozen people email me back as a reply to the newsletter saying that's so lovely, love that, it's fantastic. And then this morning the website was just alive with people buying butterfly items, so which is fantastic. And I had one seller who said he couldn't believe it. They have a really lovely like gin glass with butterflies on, and they had sold I think 8 by 10 past 9 this morning. And I don't think they've sold one for weeks. It's just like really, really, rather fabulous. But yeah, so we've had butterflies flying off the site all day. So I think it's really just appreciating and making them know that they're really valued, which they are. You know, um,
Mhm.
and again, I think that building a newsletter is one of my top tips that I give to the sellers, because it's the only surefire way that you can definitely know that you're going to reach people.
Yeah.
But also, a lot of them go out and do in-person fairs. And of course, there's always the opportunity to add people to your newsletter, list, and to just keep growing it. And as long as you're not kind of annoying and sending out too many mailings, as long as there's some value in it, then people are, I mean, I think, I get quite a low amount of people that unsubscribe, but it'd be a cool person that would see all this beautiful butterfly things and think,
Yeah. And then be like, no, I'm
un-
checking out of that.
unsubscribe. I'm not invested in that today. But
I'm
yeah, so
anti
I think,
butterfly.
but I think it's quite interesting as well because if you kind of look at the advice from social media experts, like in inverted commas, about how many times you should post on social media, we post way more than that because there are different levels of subscription on the website. And so there's a
Yeah.
bottom level of subscription that basically gets their web shop and gets the support and gets the paid adverts. But there's also a second level up where people get exposure on our social media pages. So going all the way back to what we used to do for paying people when the page was British
Mm.
Crafters, people pay more, to be part of that. And so because of that, our pages, sometimes people have, I don't know, 10 Facebook posts in a day, which, the gurus would have you believe is, it is terrible. But I guess because that's what we've always done, nobody bats an eyelid. And because actually Facebook is quite mean and only showing a certain
Yeah.
percentage, probably if I put out 10 posts, probably people are only seeing two. So, it's not so bad. Two if I'm lucky.
Yeah, right. And 2 to 10% of your audience if you're lucky.
Yeah.
And I think you're right on I talk a lot about, I call it own your audience. And that's really what you're getting at with a lot of these newsletters and you owning your audience, encouraging artisans to own their audience as well. And that's where it's important to not solely rely on social media. It can be great for discovery, but you need to get them onto your own lists because you never know when an algorithm change will absolutely annihilate you. And I've been through that as a brand too. People are like, oh, you have a great number of following. I'm like, yep, and the algorithm hates me. Sometimes it's fine, and sometimes it's really not fine. Um, and and it seems to be a little bit all over the place with algorithms. So I think you're absolutely right in that own your audience is extremely important and continue to cultivate that audience by having these touch points and putting so much thoughtfulness into the process. So when if you were to give an artisan advice on what marketplace to join, you've talked a little bit about how you've got the two different levels for your marketplace, but in your view and your experience, because you started making some time ago, you've seen marketplaces come and go, some at varying levels of success. What advice would you give to an artisan that's trying to decide where they should sell? What would you tell them to think about as part of their decision?
Well, I think that one of the biggest things I think is to look at your competition. And I think that where a lot of people go wrong is that they try and enter a market that's already totally oversaturated. And so I think it's making sure that wherever it is you're going to sell, that there's room for you. Because if you're going into a site where there's already 1,000 people doing exactly what you're doing, or 10,000 people, depending on the site, the chances of you being discovered, being able to be unique, is quite difficult. But I think that my advice to people is really to spread yourself out a little bit. Now, although I've sold on Etsy and some of the UK sites, I always had my own website. And the reason that I had that was really to own my own brand, my own business. And whilst there are a lot of sellers on my website that don't do that, there are a lot of them that do.
Mhm.
And I think it's really important to have that if you can, or at least have your web domain, to have the name. And that's one of the things I say to people when they say, no, I can't go anywhere near TikTok. Okay, that's fine, but go get your business name because else someone else will get it. register your business name. If you're not going to be on Instagram, that's fine. But, if you're Poppy Delight Cupcakes or whatever, go and get that name, because else, 5 years down the line, when you have changed what you want to do, then, you're not going to be able to get it. So I think it's kind of owning your own brand,
Mhm.
and then taking that branding that's yours across into other platforms. And so, although my business was called Dottie Designs, very unoriginal as Dottie, but Dottie Designs as a website, the same branding, the same logo, and everything was on the different places I was on. And so, and then on social media, so you're following it through and owning it as your own. But I think that a lot of platforms look quite attractive from the outside. Certainly, the biggest UK platform has much more sellers, probably, I don't know, maybe 4,000 sellers. Um, but I know from my sellers that sell on the British Craft House that are also on there, that they sell much more on the British Craft House. So just because something is big and old, established, doesn't mean that actually you're going to make sales on that. Because if there's no advertising going on, if they're not looking at your SEO, they're just letting you list your things, it might be cheaper, but actually, you've got to look at what you're getting for your money. And one of the things that my middle package with the promotion gives people is, it gives them exposure. They've got paid advertising. They, advertise on Pinterest, Google Shopping, Facebook, Instagram, and then they get exposure to the audience. And that's, and even being able to be in a newsletter that's going out to 20,000 people, um, it almost shortcuts your own work, because obviously you're piggybacking onto 12 years of my curating my engaged audience, and the person who sold the butterfly gin glasses this morning, they weren't being sold to their audience, they were being sold to my audience. So I think it's really kind of weighing up the pros and cons. And I'm a great believer, actually, and I do it myself if I'm looking at doing something, is to contact someone that's on the site, ask them how they find it, or Google and see, what kind of, Trustpilot reviews, not for customers, because normally customers will be happy with what they bought if it's handmade and lovely. But have a look and see if you can dig in and see what the sellers are saying, and there'll usually be things saying, I joined for 2 months, it was really difficult, the support was rubbish. And I know one of the problems that certainly the sellers on my site have with Etsy is that you can't get through the bots. And
Right.
so if they've got a problem that they need help with on my site, they email and they get me. They get me that replies. And occasionally, I'll hop on the phone if they need it. I'll send them screenshots of something if they're confused. And I think that, the kind of, your bots, your barriers, where you can't speak to a human, can be hugely frustrating. But I don't think that, there's the right solution for everyone. So I've got a really good friend, actually, who
Mhm.
was in the Navy with me, and she now sells on the site. She sells sea glass jewelry. She actually helps me with the social media side as well. I've known her for like 20 years. But she sells on Etsy, but she
Mhm.
sells the stuff on Etsy that she wouldn't be able to sell on the British Craft House.
Right.
So her, kind of more repeatable items, less original, kind of things that she makes quickly, and she does really, really well. And then to the British Craft House, she brings her one of a kind, her special sea glass creations, her kind of £150 pieces, whereas on Etsy she's got her £15 pieces.
Mhm.
And there's space for both. So I think it's just really trying to work out, what's best for you and what you sell.
Mhm. And what fits in your strategy? You're highlighting something important there is so often I see this conversation come up. It comes up in many different formats. It comes up one marketplace to another marketplace or Shopify versus Etsy. Which should I do? And I was like, yes, and what you highlighted is exactly right. You have to think very strategically about where are you selling and how does all of that fit. So, for example, last year I wrote an article about someone that was using both Etsy and Shopify, and she was using her own website and happened to be on Shopify. Could have been on any platform though, but she used that to do the things that you couldn't do on Etsy. Like you can't order ahead with serious lead time because you have to have all these delivery things. And so she did like advent calendar type things, and those things naturally did not fit on that platform. And so part of your discovery and your strategy in your artisan business is really looking at the strengths of the different platforms and how do you leverage their strengths. Like this idea of you bring your higher ticket items to the British Craft House because they fit there. That's what this audience is more looking for. And you're more, I won't say mass produced, but things at the entry points of the market. That's better for an Etsy audience because they want things at entry points in a lot of cases. So I think that's really interesting to hear you talk about. You have to really strategically think about it. It's not necessarily one versus the other. It could be both together. Maybe it makes your business a little more complicated, but then you have the different revenue streams from different platforms. So you've diversified your risk a little bit too, when you do
Absolutely. And
that.
I think that the whole, and I see it all the time on kind of Facebook where people say, oh, I've moved off Etsy to Shopify. And the thing for me is that they are just not comparable.
Mm-mm.
One has got, billions of visitors to their site every day. And your own site, every visitor you have to work to get there. And
Right.
when people are saying, "Oh, I just not making any sales on Shopify," well, that's because Shopify is just, or whatever your GoDaddy site, whatever the site is, you
Right.
have to get your own traffic there, and that's the
Mhm.
biggest problem, and that's the biggest plus that something like Etsy has, because it's so big and it's a juggernaut and it's moving fast and it's advertising and it's on the telly and it's at the Super Bowl. It's everywhere and everyone's heard of Etsy. And so, although it obviously comes with like a huge kit bag of flaws with it, it's still got the traffic. But I don't understand why people think, that they set up their own Shopify and then they're like, yeah, I don't make any sales. That's probably because you get like 5 visitors a day,
Right.
and it is
Right.
just like, it is quite crazy. Yeah, so I don't know. And I think that, in many ways, certainly some of my sellers, they definitely try and bring their Etsy customers across, which obviously, they don't do vocally, and because they would be in trouble. But I think it's, yeah, I think that, it's very difficult for people that are paying their mortgages with their
Right.
Etsy sales to kind of do anything else really.
Mhm. And to even strategically, they can think about, okay, well, maybe I don't need to necessarily leave Etsy. I know what the game is, but maybe as I think about the evolution of my products, I add additional things and sites on, and then I know that I've built in the time to build the traffic if I want to do it on my own website, because then you actually have to build the site, administer it, deal with, getting all the components to work. So they're different games, and you have to, I think the biggest thing is you just have to be thoughtful about it and to really make sure you understand what you're signing yourself up for. So I think you're right on the, I just left Etsy and set up my website. Like,
Good luck.
ooh, without your traffic plan for how you're getting people there, that's gonna be hard. So yes, it just makes it fascinating. So now, where do people apply if they want to sell on the British Craft House?
Button at the top left of the website that just says apply now. And it's a really short form where people have to upload a photo. And the
Hmm.
photo is, please upload a photo in the style that you would list a photo for
Ah.
sale
Hmm.
in your shop.
Hmm.
Some people do upload like pictures of them at craft fairs, and they've not read it, but yeah. So it's just like a really short description of what they do, why they want to join the British Craft House, and an image and a link to somewhere else if they sell somewhere else, because obviously that makes it quite easy for me then to be able
Mhm.
to be able to see. And I try and get back to people within 24 hours. Sometimes when somebody really amazing applies, I have to like hold back because I'm like, oh no, they only applied 3 minutes ago. I can't, I can't accept them yet. I need to wait like a respectable amount of time, because it's quite exciting when somebody, somebody new, is looking to join. Yeah, we had an amazing pottery lady join this afternoon. I did wait about half an hour to accept her, but I'm like, yes, need to get you in because their stuff's amazing. So yeah, and it just comes to me, and yeah, and I make the decision, but I'm not, I'm not really the gatekeeper of handmade.
Mhm.
The kind of criteria is that the person has to be based in Great Britain now, so we don't have any expats. Everyone has to be
Mhm.
based. That's kind of partly because of the whole tax, and it
Yep.
just makes it much easier to keep it within the country. They have to genuinely hand make their own work, so we don't have big collections. If there's like a women's institute group where they're looking to sell, what they're making at their class, we don't have that. It has to
Mm.
be. I mean, we've got some partnerships, husband and wife, or a couple of people. We don't have big groups of people that are selling stuff, and then it just has to be something really nice, and a good
Mhm.
quality item that's got a cracking photo to show it off. And yeah, that's it really. So um, I would say that there's a good degree of people that kind of don't get accepted,
Mhm.
because sometimes it's a photograph. One of our most successful and prolific card sellers on the site, actually, she applied 3 times. And on the third time, she met up with another seller in Edinburgh, and they swapped. I think they met at a craft fair, and she helped her to take photos. She helped her to take photos of her card. She applied, I accepted her, and then she completely changed how she takes her photos.
I know that's a really interesting point. I haven't heard anyone talk about something like that before because you are so curated and those photos have to be a really good quality because they're going to flow through to advertising all these other things that you've talked about. You encourage people to, if they basically correct the underlying flaws, to apply again.
Yeah, so and I've
Mm.
kind of over the 5 years I've evolved. I used to give a little bit of feedback when I didn't accept people. People generally don't want the feedback. I think if you're
Hmm.
saying no, so I kind of hold back on that now, but have a line that if people want feedback, I will give it to them. But this really lovely lady, and her cards are fantastic, and she was just kind of snapping it on her phone, and so now I do have like a little brief that will take them to a couple of like YouTube videos on how to take product photographs. And I don't expect people to have professional photos, or even for them to be something that would be in a magazine, but it just needs to be clear, and so for a card I would expect the card to be stood up and for it to be in a good light and to be able to see the whole card, so it's
Hmm.
not this. I don't think it's that I'm asking for anything that's kind of beyond most people. It's just I think that it's probably the whole kind of WhatsApp, Snapchat kind of thing that we're quite
Mm.
used to, just taking a quick photo,
Hmm.
sending it off, not thinking. So, and so it's just getting people to just stop and think a little bit more. What is the best way for whatever it is they sell to be presented, and then that's it. If they get accepted, then there's videos to help them set their shop up. They're obviously invited into the seller's Facebook hub where people will help them, and we've had people set up and sell something on the first day, which is pretty exciting. And I have an Etsy import facility. So if
Hmm.
people are coming from Etsy, they can download their Etsy CSV, and it can kind of be plugged in. Obviously, they need to change the wording for SEO,
Hmm. Right.
but that can be quite quick. Something I didn't mention before, again, that I think is quite unique to us, is that I have a limit on the number of items that people can have in their shops. And
Hmm.
so on the lower package, they can have 75 items. And then on the higher package with the social media promotion, they can have 100 items, but no more than 100, which means that nobody can swamp
Mm.
the whole area, or so it means that newer sellers that are joining and building up their collections are able to be seen. There's kind of room for them to breathe. They're not being swamped by people that there's some Etsy shops, I think they've got 10,000 items. They've got thousands and thousands of items, so we don't have any of that. The maximum anyway.
Yeah, and to your point about how some of those shops can really swamp things, because I listened to some of the Etsy earnings calls, they even talk about they've had to build entire things into their tech to make sure that people haven't swamped it and the search results end up with the same people. So you're absolutely right. So it's interesting to hear that you say, no, there's a cap here. You can't just flood the site and take over the entire category, essentially, which is what the risk is, right? I'm going to load 400 items to your category with 500 items. Well, that's just not,
Thanks.
yeah, thanks. That does not work. You think that's great, but it's actually terrible
Yeah,
for the
not good at
customer.
all.
So tell us the coolest thing that's ever sold on the British Craft House, in your opinion, knowing it's completely subjective, or pick a couple if you can't, if it's like picking a favorite child. But
That's
yeah,
really
tell me that.
difficult. So we have one lady who makes grass hairs, big grass hairs, and they're amazing. The kind of things that would sit in your garden, and
Hmm.
they're just immense. She mainly sells them to the States, actually,
Oh.
and it costs like an arm and a leg to ship it. It's amazing. But I love the fact that there's these little British hares. She does squirrels as well. That they're kind of all over the world, sitting in people's gardens, which is really nice. So she's fabulous. I mean, everyone's fabulous. But one of the businesses that I absolutely love is a lady called Fiona, and she has a roofing company,
Mhm.
and her business is using all of the offcuts from the roofing to make window boxes. So the
Mm.
kind of, I mean, I'd say probably her main clients are in London. So if you think of the whole like Notting Hill
Mhm.
vibe with tall
Mhm.
buildings with the window
Mhm.
boxes with flowers and herbs, and so yeah, she sells amazingly well, but all of it is offcuts from her
Mm.
main business, and there's something rather magical about that, that it's just, in other businesses that do similar, one would imagine it probably just ends up in the bin, or just ends up
Right.
at landfill. So the
Right.
fact that she repurposes it into something that's then so aesthetically lovely is,
Mhm. Ah,
quite
that sounds,
special.
yeah, it's fabulous. So now how do people follow you on various social media channels? Can you tell more about how they can find you?
Yes, sure. So I'm everywhere. So British Craft House, everywhere apart from on Twitter, X, whatever it's called now, if anybody's still on there. I think everyone seems to be leaving. But on there, the handle is British Crafting, and that was just the handle from the previous business.
Previous one.
And
Hmm.
British Craft House is too long, so I thought I'd just leave it as it is. So yes, so if people want to come and follow us, give me a wave, and it's kind of it's quite difficult to keep up with people following. So give me a wave and tell me that you've seen this, and I'll follow you back. But yeah, we're quite kind of busy on social media. I'm a bit rubbish at TikTok, and although I have got one TikTok that is like heading for 500,000 plays. It's nothing to do with craft at all. It was my neighbour's wisteria, and it's not even a good video. My dog was like pulling on his lead when I was trying I think I did. It was over a year ago. I think I was trying to do a TikTok video every day, because someone had told me that's what you need to do. And so this was my attempt for that day. And earlier on this month, if you typed wisteria into TikTok, it was like right at the top. I mean, it's mad, absolutely mad. But apart from that, I'm rubbish on TikTok. But yeah, I'm pretty active everywhere. So yeah, give me a follow and I'll follow you back.
All right, wonderful. Dottie, this has been so incredibly fun. I am just delighted that we were able to connect and talk about this. And so thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for everyone else that has tuned in to this as well.